What's up, guys? I'm going to be talking about introverted sensing in the first slot, the dominant function of the ISTJ and ISFJ personality types. Some of the keywords I like to use are body, being deeply in tune with the body, the needs and wants of the body, taking care of it, time, an understanding of time, being able to have the ability to reflect and reminisce on previous events and past experiences in relation to the present and the future. Skills, especially those that can be improved on over time. Preservation of body and knowledge, and memory, especially long-term memory, impressions, and muscle memory. Now, those are some of the main keywords. There's plenty more, but I think these do generally well when you're trying to think about what SI is. An example of the SI-NE axis would be, say an SI Dom is applying for a job and they're looking at the website of whatever company they're interested in, and they're looking at the requirements, the different positions that are available, even the most minute details of when the company was founded, the date, the year, who founded it, etc. All these bits and pieces of information and data, SI really likes to learn, understand, and store in the memory. And once it's completed, once it's really looked at all the bits of information, what it can do is plan. It plans through consideration of tangible information and data. And by doing so, it gains a better understanding of what can be expected. NE, what it likes to do is get in there and start to connect the dots, see the bigger picture, recognize any patterns that it can. But since SI is in the first slot and NE is in the fourth slot, SI doesn't really like NE getting in there and muddling with the data, because it can be wrong, it can be incorrect or false or a bit too airy-fairy. SI really likes to preserve the data as is. So what'll happen is the SI Dom, they'll go through all that information, they'll want to remember every single detail that they can, because it helps them get a better understanding. And then once they've had that experience of going to the interview, being able to communicate with whoever's doing the interview, learning on even more information that wasn't previously available, then the SI and NE axis will come into play, and then NE will be able to come up with different patterns and possibilities. Well, this went really well, that went really well, maybe I do have a chance of getting this job. And that's just one way of looking at it. Another way would be this thing over here on the right. It's kind of like an SI railroad or an SI ladder, whatever you will. And the point is that SI likes to learn things step by step. It does not like to skip ahead. You can think of this as like chapters of a book. SI doesn't really like to skim through it, doesn't like to skip chapters, because then it's might miss out on information. Another example would be like having a recipe, following the recipe step by step by the book in order to get that perfect meal, of which has been done in the past, has been proven to work, in order to achieve that desired result. And on the real strength of SI is that it can pick any subject and learn it via this method to achieve mastery of it. Like, you've probably heard of the 10K hour rule, that once you've spent 10K hours working on or understanding any subject or matter, that you've achieved this mastery level of understanding of it. And it can go on forever and ever. Another stereotype you might hear about SI is that they don't like to change, or that SI itself doesn't like to change. And SI likes to stay on track. It does not like to go off on tangents, because that distracts from the ultimate goal of, really understanding something or mastering it. Another way to look at this would be, say for example, an SI DOM is learning a program or a new application on their computer, and they've gone through the tutorial, they've learned some tips, the tools, all the bits and pieces of how this program operates. And then all of a sudden, the program decides to update itself, and everything that once was, all of this is now different. What was once called this is now called that. Instead of, names and numbers, there's just now buttons and pictures, and it all becomes a mess, and all of this is essentially gone to waste. See, that's what SI and SI DOMs really get frustrated with, is that if they really spend the time and effort into learning something and then it changes, it's essentially become useless, especially if there's no option to go back and restore those settings to how they were in the past. Probably the best example of SI would be like in the fable of the tortoise and the hare, where even though the hare is faster and it's more impulsive and it just wants to go ahead and explore and do everything, the tortoise takes its time. Step by step, slow and steady wins the race. I think that is a good way of understanding SI. Another one would be, like swimming, for example. An SI DOM might go to the pool, and in order to increase their understanding and their swimming abilities, they might work on only one technique a day and really get a good, deep understanding. For example, the backstroke. They're only going to do the backstroke from side to side in the pool and really come to an understanding, and then maybe the next day they'll learn a different technique and a different technique, and that overall their general understanding of swimming is improved upon because they have that basis, that step-by-step foundational approach to learning whatever activity, skill, or knowledge that they want. All right, so next I want to talk about a psychological term called associative memory, which is basically the ability to learn and remember a relationship between unrelated items in order to help commit something to memory. And this is obviously something that SI in the first is very good at. So, for example, let's take the word hippocampus, which is a part of the brain that deals with memory, simply put. And the idea here is that SI wants to remember that the hippocampus is a part of the brain that deals with memory. Now, SI DOMs, because SI is so strong, they don't necessarily need any. But of course, if any type goes into their fourth, it's just going to help if they get a good understanding of it. So, in terms of how NE can help SI store this in their memory, is that NE can come up with different possibilities as to, basically any random thing that will help remember that hippocampus is part of the brain that deals with memory. So, for example, remember the time that a hippo built a camp in the USA, or hippos have a really good memory on campus. And I know that this sounds ridiculous, but the point is that it's so ridiculous and random that you'll remember it. Another one would be seahorse. Why? Because hippocampus is the Greek word for seahorse. So seahorse, hippocampus, memory. And the point is that whatever is chosen, it'll form an impression on the mind, and SI will remember it that way. Another way to look at it is like if you're looking at a website and you see an ad, that ad is actually called an impression. If you are into marketing and advertising, you probably know that. Or you could go with the impressionist painters like Cézanne, or Monet, And, you know, what they did is they basically, you know, painted a painting to as a kind of snapshot of that period in time that they were in. You know, the lighting, everything was considered to form an impression. So it's not that SI DOMs have photographic memories, but it's kind of, it can be related to it in a way, but it's the impressions that count. You know, important events or important pieces of information in their lives that they want to remember and commit to memory. And in order, I want to wrap this video up by again talking about the SI-NE axis with SI in the first. This is the dominant function, giving an example of Kim Peek, which is more famously known as The Rain Man, which was a movie. Dustin Hoffman played the main character. He played Kim Peek. And Kim Peek was basically a very famous savant with a gifted memory. He could read a book 2 pages at the same time, one with his left eye and the other with his right eye, and remember 98% of the information. And this clip will reflect the SI-NE axis and associative memory. So hope you enjoy.
Graduate student Shy is about to give Kim a list of words, most of which will be conceptually related to the concept sweet. Shy will never say the word sweet.
Ready?
Sour.
Sour.
Candy.
Candy.
Sugar.
Sugar. You
Bitter.
are my wonder girl, Archie.
First, listen to them.
Good.
Good.
Taste.
Taste.
Tooth.
Gold tooth.
Chocolate.
Chocolate.
Heart.
Heart.
Cake.
Cake.
Tart.
Tart.
Pie.
Pie.
It's all the same list, right?
Yes, sir.
After a few minutes, Shy will see what Kim can remember.
Bitter.
Bitter is.
Candy.
Candy is.
Tooth.
Gold tooth.
Sweet.
Sweet.
Was sweet on the list?
No, sweet wasn't.
Sweet wasn't on the list.
98% of us would say sweet was on the list because we would have focused on the concept rather than the words themselves.
Cake.
Cake was.
Pie.
Pie was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kim has got every word right.
Alright guys, so I know he was a savant and that was a bit of an exaggerated example, but if I had to type Rain Man, I'd definitely pick ISTJ, and I wanted to show a demonstration of what extremely powerful SI might look like. And with a lot of SI DOMs, once they open up to you and trust you, they can really amaze you with what they know and remember about certain events and experiences, to the point that they can become walking, talking encyclopedias when they get older. But I don't know, SI in the typology community at least seems to be like one of the most underrated functions. So I hope this has helped. And to conclude, I'd like to share Andy Warhol's famous soup cans painting. And I've looked at his interviews and I've typed him as an ISFJ, and I think you can see that in his art. Lots of routine like repetition, repeating over and over, even of everyday objects and experiences, in order to really master his skills in art and painting. And it just goes to show that practice makes perfect, and SI probably understands that the best. So thanks for watching.